Good morning, scientists. Afternoon, I guess I don't know when you're watching this. So today we are going to talk about your summary for your anchor project. So remember, you have this digital doc, Invention's Anchor Project, on your Science Google Classroom. So we need to think about our essential questions before we start thinking about our summary. So what would happen if inventions didn't evolve? So think about the first phone that was ever invented, the first computer that was ever invented. The first computer took up an entire room like this office guest bedroom thing that I'm working in right now. The first phone was a party line, basically, is what they called it. So the town would all have the same number. So if I was talking to Miss Sackett on my house phone that was plugged into my wall, anybody in my town could pick up their phone and also hear our conversation. That's how the first few towns worked. Light bulbs took Edison 1,000 tries to get the first light bulb to actually light up. So think about what would happen if inventions in general never evolved. And what invention would you improve? Why? How? And that's what you've chosen to do your project on. So if you flip or scroll all the way down to your rubric, so it either looks like this, or if you have the paper copy, it looks like this. So we are going to be talking about these two pieces today, summary part 1, summary part 2. And again, we're just going to focus on the 8-point column so that we are looking for what do you have to get full credit for this. So for this, in the summary part 1, all 3 of the following are present. So did you describe your problem? You talked about your scenario and why that's an issue and why you need to fix it. Did you explain how your final product actually solves that problem? So I work in a dark room and I need a light. That's my problem. So I've created, if I'm Edison, this light bulb of sorts that gives off light based off of electricity so that I can turn it on when it's dark and I can still see. The other thing you need to make sure you address is identification of how the science concepts of the product shows and an explanation of how it shows these concepts. So if you're like, hey, what science concepts are we talking about? We go back up to the beginning and it says on the first page, right? This is our first page. What are the units covered, right? So we definitely got to energy, types and energy transformation. We are currently through distance learning working on motion, speed, and forces. We are not going to get to this, more than likely, we'll see, as well as amusement park physics. Those two are a little iffy about whether or not we'll be able to cover them. But realistically, every single scenario that we talked about deals with, for sure, one of these 2 units. So these are the ones that you need to address in your summary. Is yours about a specific type of energy? Great, talk about that type of energy. Is yours about energy transforming from one to the next? Talk about energy transformations. Is yours about speed? Talk about speed. After we go through forces, which as I'm currently making this, you don't know yet, but as we go through forces, is yours a force problem? So you have to think about your scenario that you chose and which one of these topics does it cover. So in your summary then, the last thing of part 1, you need to say, my scenario works with the topic of type of energy because it's about a light bulb and light energy. So then I have explained what topic it is and how it shows that. Then the second half of your summary, you need to make sure you do these. So the first one on that is, why did you decide on the improvements that you made? So you started with your first design and you made improvements. Why did you decide that? And realistically, where that's going to come from is in your what went well and what didn't go well. Because hopefully you're deciding on your improvements because those are the things that didn't go well when you tested them. and that you decided you're going to change it because of this reason. So you're summarizing these two pieces for that first question of part 2. Then, why is the engineering design cycle, the EDC, this is that whole cycle of problem, research and questions, design, build and test, analyze that, redesign, rebuild and test for improvements. Why is the engineering design cycle important to the advancement of society? And so what that references your first question. What would happen if inventions didn't evolve? So think about your answer to that question, because that's what you're talking about in number 2 of part 2. And then last but not least, why is each step of the EDC, the engineering design cycle, important? And what would happen if you skipped a step? So for all of our steps, remember, we have step 1, ask your question. What's my problem statement? Step 2, research. What do you know? What questions do you have? Step 3, design. So you draw and label and list your materials. Then you test and you say, what were my results after I build it? What went well and didn't go well? What am I going to change? You redesign, then you rebuild and test. Then you redesign, then you rebuild and test. So what this last question is asking is, if you skipped any of these steps, why is that not a good thing? Why is it important to have all of these steps? So that is what we need to have on your summary. Now, where you put your summary, how you're going to show that your paragraph or 2 for these, where you show that is going to depend on if we go back to school or not. Because either your summary, part 1 and part 2, are going to be your last 2 slides on your presentation in Google Slides, or if we go back to school and you are choosing to do a poster, these 2 things should either be extremely neatly written or typed and printed and then taped onto your poster board. So where you put these is really going to determine on if we go back to school or not. What I would do if I were you and you're working on this from home right now is I would make your own Google Doc. I would title it Invention Anchor Project Summary so that you can always find it. And I would type this for now, because either you can then print it off or have me print it off if we get back to school, or it's a quick copy and paste onto a slideshow if you have to do it, if we don't go back to school and we have to present these that way. All right, so that is the summary. There's going to be one more video about the engineering design cycle, and that will be explaining either that slideshow or poster board. That video might not come for a while, because if we are not back at school, I just have to go over the slideshow. If we are, I give you both options, so that might be a while. Regardless, this project is not going to be due until mid-May. So you still have some time, but you need to make sure you're working on this while still doing all of your tasks for your other class. As always, if you have questions, email myself or Ms. Sackett. We would love to help you. Good job and good luck, scientists.